Something is happening to you that nobody talks about. Not because it's shameful, because it's invisible. You didn't wake up one day and decide to push people away. You didn't build walls. You didn't choose silence. But somehow, the circle got smaller, the invitations stopped, and in the space where friendships used to exist, there's just you. Most people would call that loneliness. Therapists would hand you a worksheet. The internet would tell you to put yourself out there. But what if the real explanation has nothing to do with social anxiety, introversion, or bad luck? What if your mind is running a filter, quietly, constantly, that most people never develop? A filter so precise it makes shallow connections impossible, so sharp it makes you unreadable to the average person, so deep that the ones who can't match it don't stay. That filter isn't a flaw, but here's where it gets dangerous. If you don't understand exactly how it works, you'll confuse your depth for superiority, your solitude for strength, and slowly, without noticing, you'll become unreachable, not enlightened, not rare, just alone. There are 7 traits behind this pattern. Each one is real, each one has a hidden cost, and each one comes with something nobody tells you, a trap built inside the gift. By the end of this, you won't feel better than anyone, but you'll finally understand why your world got quiet, and what to do before the last door closes. And one of these traits is the exact reason someone important disappeared from your life without explanation. There's a moment most people miss. Someone smiles at you, says the right words, uses the right tone, and everything looks fine, normal, safe. But somewhere underneath the surface of that interaction, a signal fires. Quiet, precise, undeniable. And you already know something is off before you can name it. Not paranoia, not insecurity, recognition. You felt it when a compliment arrived wrapped in something sharp, when an invitation appeared exactly at the moment you stopped needing it, when someone said, "I'm proud of you," and your body didn't believe them before your brain caught up. That's the inconsistency radar, and it doesn't ask for permission before it activates. Here's the mechanism nobody explains. People who perform emotions instead of feeling them rely on others not noticing the gap between what they say and what they mean. When you notice that gap instantly, they feel exposed, not judged. Exposed. And exposed people don't stay comfortable around you. They leave, pull back, or turn the discomfort into a story where you're the problem. That's not rejection. That's calibration. But here's the cost. And this is the part that matters. A radar this sensitive doesn't always distinguish between deception and imperfection, between someone performing loyalty and someone simply struggling to express it. Over time, if you never question the signal, it stops being a filter and starts being a wall. One detail becomes evidence. Silence becomes betrayal. A bad day becomes a pattern. The move that changes everything is simple. Don't judge by one signal. Wait for 3. 1 moment is noise. 3 moments is truth. Because the people worth keeping aren't always the clearest ones. Sometimes they're just the ones still there after your radar tried to erase them. And once your mind learns to detect what's fake, it becomes allergic to something else entirely. You know the feeling. You're sitting in a conversation that's been going for 20 minutes and nothing, not a single word, has landed anywhere real. Just recycled complaints, names you don't care about, opinions borrowed from someone else's outrage. And somewhere in your chest something quietly dims. It's not boredom, it's closer to hunger. The kind that gets worse the more you eat the wrong thing. Shallow conversation doesn't just fail to satisfy you, it drains you. Like your mind showed up ready to build something and was handed noise instead. Most people find comfort in that noise. It fills silence, creates belonging, requires nothing. For you, it does the opposite. It reminds you of everything that's missing. That's low noise tolerance, and it's not a personality quirk. It's a different threshold for what makes human contact feel worth it. The social mechanism is simple and brutal. Groups don't form around depth. They form around shared distraction. Gossip, complaints, status games. These are the social glue for most circles. When you can't hold your end of that glue, you don't just feel out of place. You become out of place. And the group, without ever deciding to, starts building without you. Here's the trap hiding inside this trait. Depth without flexibility doesn't make you profound. It makes you exhausting. If every conversation has to go somewhere meaningful or you shut down, people stop trying. Not because they're shallow, because you made connection feel like an exam they didn't study for. The shift is small but everything. 90 seconds of surface, then one real question. Not a test, a bridge. You meet people where they are, just long enough to show them somewhere better exists. Because depth isn't what isolates you most. Autonomy does. It happens in a room full of people who all seem to agree. Nobody voted. Nobody announced a verdict. But somehow, silently, the group arrived at a position, and the invisible pressure to join it is everywhere. In the pauses, in the eye contact, in the way everyone keeps looking at you, like you're one nod away from belonging. And instead of nodding, you feel your chest tighten. Not because you necessarily disagree, but because the expectation itself feels like a hand reaching into your mind uninvited, like something essential is being asked to shrink just enough to fit the room. That tightening, that's the autonomy reflex. And it's not stubbornness. It's a nervous system that was built to protect the integrity of your own thinking. The mechanism at work here is older than friendship. Groups survive through loyalty, shared beliefs, synchronized behavior, collective identity. When someone inside the group consistently refuses to sync, the group reads it as a threat, not a different opinion, a threat. Because if you don't need their agreement to feel okay, you can't be controlled by withholding it. And people who can't be controlled make others feel strangely unsafe. So they push, or they leave. And either way, the circle shrinks. And most people who develop this trait never realize it is the reason their circle never grows again. Not because they chose isolation, but because their mind stopped allowing compatibility that isn't real. But here's where this trait turns on you. There's a razor-thin line between protecting your mind and becoming addicted to opposition, between sovereign thinking and reflexive contrarianism, between standing for something real and just needing to be the one who didn't follow. If you can't tell which one you're doing, neither can anyone else. The distinction that saves you is this: 2 lanes, always. Values you don't negotiate, ever. And social flexibility that doesn't cost you those values. You can laugh at the joke without adopting the worldview. You can show up without selling out. Then something shifts. You stop spending time. You start protecting it. There's a weight that follows you everywhere. Not guilt, not anxiety. Something quieter and more constant. The feeling that every hour carries a price tag. That spending an afternoon without building something, learning something, moving something forward, isn't rest. It's loss. Like sand running through fingers you can't close fast enough. Other people go out and come back light. You go out and come back calculating. That's time gravity. And it doesn't announce itself dramatically. It shows up in the middle of a dinner you chose to attend. When a voice somewhere behind your thoughts starts a quiet audit. What is this giving me? What am I not doing right now? Where is this going? Not because you're cold, because time, for you, has texture, weight, consequence. The social fracture this creates is precise. Most people use connection as escape, a way to step outside the pressure of their own lives for a few hours. But you bring the pressure with you. You're not escaping, you're still in it, just in a different room, and that means you're never fully there. They feel it before they understand it. The person across from you slowly realizes they're competing with something invisible, a mission, a timeline, a version of yourself you're always moving toward. And that's a competition nobody signs up for twice. The danger hidden here is subtle and ruthless. Purpose can become armor. The mission becomes the excuse that sounds too noble to question. Too many people have used "I'm focused on my goals" as a way to never be vulnerable, never be inconvenienced, never be truly known. Solitude with direction is power. Solitude as a shield is slow collapse. One anchor relationship, not 20, not 5. One person you invest in with the same intentionality you give your work. Not because connection is a strategy, but because even the strongest minds rot in complete isolation. Now, here's the one that makes people dislike you before you say a single word. You walked into the room and did nothing wrong. You didn't insult anyone, didn't compete, didn't challenge. You were simply present, quiet maybe, observant, not performing warmth you didn't feel, not filling silence with words that meant nothing, just there, exactly as you are. And somehow, that was enough to make someone uncomfortable. They called it arrogance, or coldness, or that vague, untouchable accusation, "There's just something about you." And you stood there genuinely confused, replaying the interaction, searching for the moment you did something wrong, finding nothing. Here's what actually happened. Your stillness became a mirror. When someone is carrying unresolved insecurity, about their intelligence, their choices, their authenticity. They need the people around them to be slightly chaotic too, performing, seeking approval, visibly needing validation. It normalizes their own internal noise. But when you're not doing any of that, when you're simply grounded in a way they haven't learned to be, your presence reflects back everything they're avoiding in themselves. That reflection feels like judgment even when it's silence. It feels like critique even when it's calm. And people don't attack the mirror because they're angry at the glass. They attack it because they can't stand what they see. This is the most socially expensive trait on this list, because the damage happens before you speak, before you decide, before you even know there was something to decide. The trap is seductive and poisonous. Being misread this many times can convince you that you are superior, that their discomfort is proof of your depth, that you don't owe anyone softness. That's where rare becomes repellent. The correction isn't performance, it's precision. Questions instead of diagnoses. Curiosity instead of silence that cuts. You don't need to shrink. You need to become less threatening without becoming less yourself. But the biggest gap isn't social. It's time. While everyone else is living in the room, you're already 3 moves ahead. Not as a choice. Not as a discipline you developed. It happens automatically. The way some people hear music and others hear individual notes. Someone describes a plan and you already see where it breaks. Someone makes a decision and you've already mapped the version of their life where that decision compounds into something they didn't expect. You're not trying to be ahead. You simply can't stop seeing forward. And the present, because of that, always feels slightly blurry. That's the future-locked mind. A consciousness that processes now in terms of later. And in a world where most people are reacting to the news, to their mood, to whoever texted last, your ability to see consequence before it arrives feels like a superpower until it becomes the reason nobody can reach you. The synchronization failure is quiet, but total. People bond in the present tense over what's happening now, what they're feeling today, what matters in this specific moment. But you're rarely fully in this specific moment. You're visiting it while mentally living somewhere further out. And the person trying to connect with you right now, they can feel the distance. They just can't name it. So they name it wrong. They call you detached, mysterious, unavailable. And eventually they stop trying to cross a distance they don't understand. Here's the version of this that destroys people slowly. Anxiety wearing the mask of vision. There's a difference between seeing the future clearly and being held hostage by it, between strategic thinking and a mind that cannot rest in the present without guilt. One builds, the other just burns. The line is simple but demands honesty. 10 minutes building the vision, 50 minutes executing in the now. Planning is a room you visit, not a room you live in. The moment it becomes where you reside, you've stopped moving forward. You're just hiding in a future that never arrives. And that leads to the rarest trait of all, the one that makes you need people differently than they need each other. Most people need the world to tell them they're okay, not consciously, not dramatically, but underneath the daily routine, the posting, the checking, the performing, there's a quiet, constant hunger for confirmation that they're on the right track, that they matter, that what they're doing is worth doing. And when that confirmation doesn't come, something inside them starts to wobble. You don't wobble that way. You can sit in complete silence, with no audience, no feedback, no applause, and still move, still build, still push towards something that exists right now only inside your own mind. The engine that runs you doesn't need external fuel to keep firing. It generates its own. That's not discipline. That's a fundamentally different relationship with motivation itself. The social consequence of this is invisible until it isn't. In most human dynamics, influence flows through leverage, approval given or withheld, belonging offered or withdrawn. These are the invisible strings that keep groups intact. But if praise doesn't inflate you and silence doesn't collapse you, those strings have nothing to attach to. You become, socially speaking, uncontrollable. And uncontrollable people make others feel powerless in a way they can't quite articulate. So they fill that confusion with distance. Here's where this gift quietly poisons itself. Independence taken too far stops being strength and starts being inaccessibility. There's a version of self-sufficiency that looks exactly like emotional unavailability from the outside, and from the inside too, if you're not paying attention. The person who never needs anyone eventually becomes the person no one knows how to reach. Not because they're broken, because they forgot that being known requires letting someone in. Selective openness is the practice that saves this trait from itself, not vulnerability broadcast to everyone. That's performance in reverse. But one person, chosen carefully, given real access, not to your highlight reel, to the actual weight of what you carry. Because even an engine, left running in isolation long enough, eventually burns through itself. Now, if everything you've heard so far made you feel seen, powerful, finally understood, you're walking directly into the trap. Here's what just happened. 7 traits, 7 moments of recognition, 7 times you nodded, quietly, privately, and felt something click into place. Like this video was built specifically for the architecture of your mind. Like someone finally had the vocabulary for something you've been carrying without a name. And somewhere in that recognition, something else arrived too. Something that felt like relief but had sharper edges. I'm not the problem. I never was. I'm just built differently. That feeling is real. And it is also the most dangerous thing this video could leave you with. Here's the truth that the comfortable version of this story leaves out. These traits can be completely genuine, and your interpretation of them can still be catastrophically wrong. The radar can be real and also paranoid. The depth can be authentic and also weaponized against intimacy. The autonomy can be legitimate and also a sophisticated disguise for fear. The internal engine can be powerful and also running you away from every person who ever tried to get close. Rare traits don't immunize you from self-deception. They just make the self-deception more elegant. The trap has a specific mechanism. You collect evidence of your own depth, moments of being misunderstood, conversations that felt beneath you, connections that couldn't hold your weight, and slowly, without noticing, you build an identity out of the wound. You stop calling it pain. You call it discernment. You stop calling it loneliness. You call it standards. And the world, which was never obligated to meet you perfectly, becomes something you've decided you're above. Solitude is a tool. Turned into a religion, it doesn't purify you. It calcifies you. The person who was once too deep for shallow connections quietly becomes too defended for any connection at all. Not enlightened, not sovereign, just unreachable, and completely convinced that unreachable is the same thing as rare. The enemy was never other people's noise. It was the story you started telling yourself inside the silence. These traits are real. The work now is making sure they build a life, and not just an identity that keeps you safe from one. So here's where you actually are. Not broken, not superior, not a mystery the world failed to solve. You're someone with a specific set of traits that make ordinary connection feel impossible, and extraordinary connection feel like the only thing worth having. That's not a curse, but untrained, unexamined, unnamed, it becomes one. The protocol is 4 moves, simple, unromantic, and more powerful than any insight this video gave you. Keep standards, lower friction. The bar for who earns your trust stays exactly where it is, but the way you show up before that trust is built, that gets warmer, more human, less like an audit. People can't meet your depth if your surface feels like a test they're already failing. Become findable. The people built like you are not going to knock on your door. They're somewhere building, thinking, creating in their own silence. Post the idea, share the project, put the vision somewhere visible. You don't need an audience, you need a signal. And the right people recognize signals. Build a small circle by design, not by accident, not by proximity, not by whoever happened to stay. 1 to 3 people chosen with the same intentionality you give everything else that matters. Depth doesn't scale, it compounds. Don't let isolation become your identity. Solitude is a phase with a purpose, not a destination with a flag planted in it. The moment you start defending your aloneness instead of using it, something has gone wrong. And you're sharp enough to know the difference if you're willing to look. If you recognized yourself anywhere in this video, subscribe. The next one is about the single habit that turns rare minds into bitter minds. And you'll want to catch that before it catches you. And if you want the full map, the exact social strategies to stay sovereign without going cold, comment rare below. I'll build it specifically for the people who made it to the end. Because if you're still here, your mind has already separated itself. What you do next determines whether that becomes isolation or advantage.